The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the small apartment, casting stripes across the worn furniture. Ethan Cole stood at the kitchen counter, packing lunch into a faded blue lunchbox. At 35, he had the kind hands of someone who spent his days caring for others, though the lines around his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and worry. "Dad, you forgot the napkin again," Emma called from the doorway, her 8-year-old frame dwarfed by her oversized backpack. She squinted slightly as she spoke, a habit she'd developed over the past year as her vision deteriorated. Ethan grabbed a napkin and tucked it into the lunchbox. "What would I do without you, sweetheart? Probably forget your own lunch too," she replied with a grin that melted his heart every single time. The apartment was modest, 2 bedrooms in a building that had seen better decades. But it was clean, filled with Emma's drawings on the refrigerator and photographs of happier times, before cancer had taken his wife Sarah 3 years ago. Since then, it had been just the two of them against the world. Ethan worked as a medical technician at Riverside Community Hospital, a small facility on the city's outskirts that served the working-class neighborhoods. The pay was modest, but the work felt meaningful. He calibrated equipment, assisted in procedures, and sometimes held the hands of frightened patients when the nurses were too busy. "How's your eye feeling?" he asked as they walked to the bus stop. Emma shrugged, that casual gesture children use when they don't want their parents to worry. "It's okay, a little blurry sometimes." Ethan's jaw tightened. The consultation with the ophthalmologist had been clear. Emma needed surgery to correct her deteriorating vision. And soon. The procedure cost $12,000, money he didn't have, even after working double shifts for 6 months. His insurance covered barely half. Across town, in a glass tower that pierced the morning sky, Alexandra Whitmore stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, surveying the city below. At 32, she was the youngest CEO in the pharmaceutical industry, having built Whitmore Therapeutics from her father's failing company into a billion-dollar empire. Forbes called her ruthless. The Wall Street Journal called her brilliant. Neither publication mentioned that she was desperately lonely. Her penthouse office was a study in minimalist luxury white marble, sleek furniture, art that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Everything was perfect, controlled, exactly as she designed it. Everything except the persistent exhaustion that had plagued her for months, the yellowing of her skin, the way her body was slowly shutting down. "Miss Whitmore, Dr. Patterson is on line 3. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Alexandra pressed the button. "Put him through." "Alexandra, we need to talk about your latest results." Dr. Patterson's voice was grave. "Your kidney function has declined significantly. We're looking at complete renal failure within months. You need a transplant, and you need it soon." She closed her eyes. "How long for a match? With your rare blood type?" "Could be years. We're putting you on the priority list. But I won't lie to you, the odds aren't good." After the call ended, Alexandra remained standing at the window. Below, the city pulsed with life, people rushing to work, living their ordinary lives, taking for granted the simple act of a body that functioned properly. She had built an empire, conquered boardrooms, negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions. But she couldn't negotiate with her own failing organs. For the first time in years, Alexandra Whitmore felt powerless. 3 weeks later, Ethan was restocking supplies in the hospital's storage room when he overheard 2 nurses talking in the hallway. "It's such a rare blood type," one said. "AB negative with specific tissue markers. They've been searching nationwide for months. That poor woman is running out of time. I heard she's young too, some kind of genetic disorder. She's been managing it with dialysis. But it's not enough anymore." Ethan continued his work, but the conversation stayed with him. That evening, as he helped Emma with her homework, he found himself thinking about the unknown woman fighting for her life. Someone's daughter, maybe someone's mother. "Dad, you're staring at nothing again," Emma said, waving her hand in front of his face. "Sorry, kiddo. Just thinking." "About what?" How could he explain to an 8-year-old the weight of knowing you could save a life? "About how lucky we are to have each other." The next morning, Ethan found himself in the hospital's transplant coordinator's office. Margaret Chen had been coordinating organ donations for 15 years, and she had seen all kinds of donors walk through her door. But something about the quiet man sitting across from her was different. "You understand this is major surgery, Ethan? There are risks. Recovery takes months. And you have a daughter to think about." "I know," he said simply, "but I'm healthy. The test showed I'm a match, and someone out there is dying. You don't even know who the recipient is. Does that matter?" Margaret studied him for a long moment. In her experience, most living donors knew their recipients, family members, close friends. Anonymous donation to a stranger was rare, especially from someone who clearly couldn't afford to miss work. "It matters for some people," she said carefully. "This isn't a decision to make lightly. You'd be giving up part of yourself for someone you'll never meet. My daughter lost her mother to cancer. I watched Sarah die, and there was nothing I could do. Nothing." His voice cracked slightly. "If I can stop someone else from experiencing that loss, then yes, it matters. It matters more than anything." The surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Ethan told Emma he was having a routine procedure and asked his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to stay with her. He didn't mention the kidney. Didn't want Emma to worry or try to talk him out of it. The night before the surgery, Emma crawled into bed beside him. "Dad, are you scared?" "A little," he admitted. "Will the person you're helping be okay?" He froze. "How did you? I heard you on the phone with Mrs. Chen. You're giving someone your kidney, aren't you?" There was no point in lying. "Yes." Emma was quiet for a moment, then hugged him tight. "You're going to be someone's hero, Dad. Someone is going to live because of you." The surgical suite was cold and bright. As the anesthesiologist prepared the IV, Ethan thought about the woman on another operating table somewhere in this hospital. About the life that hung in the balance. He thought about Emma, about Sarah. About the fragile thread that connected all human beings in their shared vulnerability. "Count backward from 10, the anesthesiologist said. 10, 9, 8. In the adjacent surgical suite, Alexandra lay unconscious as Dr. Patricia Morrison made the first incision. The donor kidney was being transported down the hallway in a specialized container, kept at precise temperature, handled with the reverence of the precious gift it was. "Kidneys looking good," one of the surgical team reported. Dr. Morrison worked with steady hands, removing the diseased organ that had been slowly killing her patient, preparing to implant the healthy one that represented a second chance at life. 6 hours later, both surgeries were complete. Ethan woke in recovery, groggy and in pain. His first thought was, did it work? Did she survive? "The recipient is doing well," a nurse told him, reading his expression. "The kidney is functioning perfectly. You saved her life." Alexandra woke to the sound of machines beeping steadily. She was alive. The surgery had worked. Somewhere in this hospital was a person who had given her a future, and she didn't even know their name. Recovery was harder than Ethan had anticipated. The hospital discharged him after 3 days, but the pain medication made him foggy, and the surgical wound pulled with every movement. Mrs. Patterson helped with Emma during the day, but Ethan could see the worry in his daughter's eyes every time he winced or moved too slowly. "I'm okay, sweetheart," he assured her repeatedly. "But you're hurting. It's temporary. I'll heal." What he didn't tell her was that the hospital had informed him they needed to reduce his hours. His supervisor had been sympathetic but firm. Until he was fully recovered and cleared by a physician, they couldn't risk him handling delicate equipment or assisting in procedures. His paycheck was cut by 40%. The bills piled up. The surgery itself had been covered by the recipient's insurance. But there were medications, follow-up appointments, transportation costs. The money he'd saved for Emma's eye surgery began to drain away, dollar by agonizing dollar. Emma noticed, of course. Children always do. She started turning off lights religiously, stopped asking for new books, wore shoes that were half a size too small without complaint. "Dad," she said one evening, We don't really need cable, do we? Ethan looked at his daughter, this fierce, compassionate soul who was trying so hard to help, and felt his heart shatter and swell simultaneously. We'll be okay, Emma. I promise. Because you're a hero, she said firmly, and heroes always find a way. If only it were that simple. Alexandra's recovery was swift. Within 2 weeks, she was back in her office, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for a major acquisition. Her energy had returned, the fog of uremia lifted. Physically, she had never felt better, but something had changed. She found herself distracted during board meetings, her mind wandering to the anonymous person who had given her this second chance. The hospital's privacy policies prevented her from learning the donor's identity, but that didn't stop her from wondering, who would do such a thing? What kind of person gives away part of themselves to a stranger? Her assistant, Jennifer, noticed the change. Miss Whitmore, you've been staring at that report for 20 minutes without turning the page. Alexandra blinked. I'm sorry. I'm just distracted. Maybe you should take some time off. You just had major surgery. I've taken enough time. But that night, alone in her penthouse with its sweeping views and perfect silence, Alexandra felt the walls closing in. She had everything she'd worked for the company, the wealth, the respect of her industry. She could buy anything, go anywhere, do anything, except thank the person who saved her life. She called Dr. Morrison at home, something she'd never done before. Is there any way to contact my donor? I want to thank them. Alexandra, you know the rules. Anonymous donation means anonymous. The donor chose not to be identified. What if I set up a fund, something to show my gratitude? There was a pause. That's actually not a bad idea. You could establish a charity for living donors. Help with their medical expenses. Lost wages during recovery. It wouldn't be connected to your donor specifically, but it would honor what they did. After hanging up, Alexandra sat in the darkness of her living room, a plan forming in her mind. She would find her donor, somehow, and she would make sure they knew that their sacrifice hadn't been in vain. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a past-due electric bill and a credit card offer. Ethan almost threw it away, assuming it was more junk mail. But something made him open it. Asterisk. Dear Mr. Cole. Asterisk. Asterisk. You are invited to interview for a position with the Living Donor Support Fund, a new charitable organization dedicated to assisting individuals who have made the extraordinary choice to donate organs to strangers. Your unique experience and perspective would be invaluable to our mission. Asterisk. Asterisk. Please contact Jennifer Martinez at the number below to schedule an interview at your earliest convenience. Asterisk. Ethan read it 3 times. A job? With a charity connected to organ donation? It seemed too perfectly timed to be coincidence. The interview was scheduled for the following Monday at an address downtown. When Ethan arrived, he found himself in the lobby of Whitmore Therapeutics, one of the city's most prominent pharmaceutical companies. The gleaming lobby, the efficient staff, the obvious wealth, all of it made him acutely aware of his worn suit jacket and scuffed shoes. Mr. Cole, I'm Jennifer. Thank you for coming. Miss Whitmore will see you now. Ethan followed her to a private elevator that opened directly into a penthouse office. And there, standing at the window with her back to him, was a woman with dark hair and a familiar silhouette. When she turned around, Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. He knew that face. He'd seen it briefly before the surgery, when the transplant coordinator had shown him a photo of the recipient not to identify her, but to help him understand the human being on the other side of his decision. You, he whispered. Alexandra's careful composure cracked. You're Ethan Cole. You're the one who saved my life. The room seemed to tilt. All the careful plans, the professional interview, the maintained distance, everything evaporated in the face of this impossible moment. How did you find me? Ethan asked. I didn't mean to. I swear. Alexandra's voice shook. I created the fund legitimately to help living donors. Your name came up through the hospital's referral system as someone who might benefit from the program. I didn't know it was you until I saw your file this morning." They stood there, donor and recipient, two people whose lives had intersected in the most intimate way possible, and yet, who were complete strangers. "I don't know what to say," Alexandra admitted. "Thank you seems so inadequate. You don't have to say anything. I didn't do it for thanks." "Then why?" Ethan met her eyes. "Because someone needed help, and I could give it. That's all." In that moment, Alexandra Whitmore, who had negotiated with Fortune 500 CEOs, who had built a billion-dollar empire through sheer will and intelligence, found herself completely undone by the simple honesty of a man who asked for nothing in return. Against her better judgment, Alexandra offered Ethan the position. He would coordinate outreach to potential living donors, work with hospitals to streamline the donation process, and help create support systems for donors during their recovery. The salary was more than he'd ever made, with full benefits that included coverage for dependents. Emma's eye surgery was scheduled within a month. "Dad, this is amazing." Emma bounced on her bed when he told her, "You saved someone's life, and now you get to help save more lives. And I get to see better. It's like a miracle." Ethan wasn't sure about miracles, but he couldn't deny the extraordinary turn his life had taken. Working with Alexandra was unexpected. He'd anticipated a cool corporate environment, but the Living Donor Support Fund was housed in a smaller office away from the main Whitmore Therapeutics building. It was just him, Alexandra, and two other staff members. Alexandra herself spent more time there than in her CEO office, personally reviewing every case, every application for assistance. "Why are you so involved in this?" Ethan asked one afternoon as they reviewed applications together. Alexandra's hands stilled on the papers. "Because I was dying, and someone I'd never met decided I was worth saving." How do you respond to that? How do you go back to caring only about profit margins and stock prices when you've been given a second life? You're planning to leave your company? I'm considering it. My CFO can run operations. I built Whitmore Therapeutics, but maybe it doesn't need me anymore. Maybe I need to do something that matters. Emma started visiting the office after school, finishing her homework at an empty desk while Ethan worked. Alexandra found herself drawn to the girl. This bright spirit, who viewed the world with curiosity despite its hardships. "Miss Whitmore, do you know how to make grilled cheese?" Emma asked one evening when Ethan was tied up on a phone call. No, actually." "Really? It's super easy. I can teach you." That's how Alexandra found herself in the small break room, watching an 8-year-old girl explain the precise butter-to-bread ratio needed for the perfect grilled cheese. It was absurd. She had catered lunches delivered daily, could afford any restaurant in the city, but something about standing in that cramped kitchen, learning from Emma's patient instruction, made her happier than she'd been in years. "See? Golden brown on both sides," Emma said proudly. Alexandra took a bite. It was warm and simple and perfect. "This might be the best thing I've ever eaten," Emma beamed. "It's better when you make it yourself." Over the following weeks, Alexandra found herself adjusting her schedule to be at the office when Emma arrived. They established routines, reviewing homework together, taking walks around the block, small domestic rituals that Alexandra had never experienced. She had built a business empire, but had never learned the simple pleasure of helping a child with long division. Ethan watched these interactions with mixed emotions. On one hand, seeing Emma happy warmed his heart. On the other, a small voice whispered warnings. "Don't get too attached. This isn't your world. Eventually, reality will reassert itself." The article appeared on a Friday morning in the business section, but it spread like wildfire across the internet. ***. Billionaire CEO falls for kidney donor. Modern fairy tale or exploitation. ***. Someone had leaked the story, Alexandra's transplant, Ethan's donation, their current working relationship. The article was framed sympathetically, but the underlying insinuation was clear. Wealthy woman takes advantage of desperate man's generosity. By noon, the story had been picked up by national outlets. By evening, there were camera crews outside the fund's office. Miss Whitmore, is it true you're in a relationship with your donor? Did you offer him money in exchange for the kidney? What do you say to critics who claim this represents an exploitative power dynamic? Alexandra's phone lit up with calls from board members, investors, and her company's public relations team. The message was unanimous. This was a disaster for her image and the company's reputation. The emergency board meeting was brutal. You've compromised everything we've built, Victor Harrison, the chairman, said coldly. This looks like you bought an organ, regardless of the actual circumstances. That's not what happened, Alexandra protested. It doesn't matter what happened. It matters what people believe. And right now, they believe you're either exploiting a poor man's desperation, or you're so naive that you can't see how this appears. He gave me my life back. Am I supposed to pretend that didn't happen? Pretend he doesn't exist? Yes, Victor said flatly. That's exactly what you should do. Cut ties with him completely. Shut down this donor fund. Return to your actual job and let this scandal die. That evening, Alexandra sat in her penthouse, staring at her reflection in the darkened windows. She had spent her entire adult life building walls, maintaining control, never showing weakness. And now, those very survival mechanisms were threatening to destroy the first genuine connections she'd made in years. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his apartment, reading the same articles, seeing his life reduced to a headline. Emma was asleep, mercifully unaware of the storm brewing around them. His phone rang. It was Alexandra. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this. It's not your fault. The board wants me to fire you. To shut down the fund. To pretend this never happened. Ethan closed his eyes. He'd known this was too good to be true. Then maybe you should. What? I don't want to be the reason your company fails. I don't want Emma dragged through this mess. If me disappearing makes this easier for you, then that's what I'll do. That's not what I want. But it's what's best, isn't it? We're from different worlds, Alexandra. I always knew that. This past few months, it was beautiful. But it was never going to last. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. You're a CEO. I'm a medical tech who got lucky with a kidney match. This was always temporary. He hung up before she could respond, before she could hear his voice break. Alexandra threw herself back into work, returning to the cold, controlled existence she'd perfected over the years. She attended board meetings, negotiated deals, reviewed financial reports. On paper, everything was returning to normal. But at night, in the silence of her penthouse, the emptiness was suffocating. She found herself thinking about Emma's grilled cheese lessons, about the way Ethan's face lit up when discussing a donor case they'd helped, about the simple warmth of feeling connected to something beyond balance sheets and profit margins. Jennifer found her crying in her office one evening. Something the assistant had never witnessed in 5 years of working together. Miss Whitmore? I had everything, Alexandra whispered. Everything I thought I wanted. And I was dying inside, literally dying. And then, someone saved me, and for a few months, I got to feel what it's like to actually live. Not just exist. And now, I'm right back where I started. Then why stay here? Because it's what I built. It's who I am. Is it, though? Jennifer asked gently. Or is it just what you convinced yourself you should be? The question haunted Alexandra. She remembered the girl she'd been before her father's company consumed her life, the one who'd wanted to be a doctor, who'd actually cared about helping people rather than just maximizing pharmaceutical profits. When had that person disappeared? Across town, Ethan had returned to his old position at Riverside Community Hospital. The pay was lower, the benefits worse, but at least here, he wasn't a headline. At least here he could work without cameras following him. But Emma noticed the change. Her father smiled less, moved through life mechanically. Even after her eye surgery succeeded perfectly, restoring her vision to full clarity, his joy seemed muted. "You miss her, don't you?" Emma asked one night. "Miss who, sweetheart?" "Miss Whitmore." "You miss working with her." "And I think you miss her." Ethan couldn't deny it. Sometimes things don't work out the way we hope. That's what grown-ups say when they're too scared to try. You gave her your kidney, Dad. You literally gave her part of yourself, and then you gave up on her because some newspapers were mean? That doesn't sound like the hero who saved someone's life. The accident happened on a Wednesday during evening rush hour. Ethan was driving home from a late shift when he witnessed a collision at the intersection ahead. A delivery truck had run a red light, T-boning a sedan. Without hesitation, he pulled over and ran toward the wreckage. The truck driver was dazed but mobile. But the sedan was crushed on the driver's side. And inside, a woman was trapped and bleeding. "Call 911. Ethan shouted to bystanders. He squeezed through the broken window, assessing her injuries with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent years in medical settings. Severe laceration on her arm, possible internal bleeding, going into shock. "Stay with me," he told her. "Help is coming." She was young, maybe late 20s, and terrified. I can't breathe." "Yes, you can. Look at me. Focus on my voice. Breathe with me. In and out." The ambulance arrived within minutes. But those minutes felt eternal. As they loaded the woman onto a stretcher, one of the paramedics clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "You probably saved her life, man. She would have bled out before we got here." Ethan watched the ambulance speed away, adrenaline still pumping through his veins. Then he noticed the pain in his side, the warmth spreading across his shirt. In the chaos, he'd cut himself on the broken glass, deep enough that blood was soaking through his clothes. The last thing he saw before he passed out was the evening sky fading to black. He woke in Riverside Community Hospital, his own workplace, with a concerned ER doctor standing over him. "Ethan, you're lucky. The cut was deep but clean. We stitched you up. Gave you some blood. You'll be fine." The woman from the accident? Critical but stable. "They're prepping her for surgery now. Your quick thinking saved her." The word spread quickly through the hospital. Ethan Cole had saved another life. Jennifer, Alexandra's assistant, heard about it through a hospital connection and immediately called her boss. Alexandra was in a board meeting when her phone buzzed with Jennifer's text. Ethan in hospital. Accident. He's okay, but you should know. She stood up mid-sentence, grabbed her coat, and walked out, ignoring Victor's protests. She drove faster than she should have, her heart pounding. Memories flooding back, the sound of machines in the operating room. The uncertainty, the fear. When she arrived at Riverside, she demanded to know where Ethan Cole was being treated. "Are you family?" the nurse asked. Alexandra hesitated. What was she? "He saved my life. Please, I need to see him." The nurse's expression softened. Room 347. Alexandra found him sitting up in bed, looking exhausted but alive. Their eyes met, and everything, the articles, the scandal, the separation, fell away. "You're okay," she breathed. "I'm fine. Just a cut." Jennifer said there was an accident. "That you saved someone. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Alexandra said firmly, moving closer to his bed. "No, that's where you're wrong. Most people would have driven past. Most people wouldn't have risked themselves. But you did. Just like you risked yourself for me, a stranger you'd never met." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. "I thought you'd moved on." "Moved on?" She laughed bitterly. "Ethan, I've been miserable. I went back to my old life, and it felt like suffocating. All the money, all the success, it meant nothing compared to the few months I spent learning how to make grilled cheese with your daughter, and actually caring about something beyond quarterly earnings. The scandal, I don't care about the scandal. I don't care what the board thinks, or the press, or anyone else. I care about you. I care about Emma. And when Jennifer told me you were hurt, all I could think was that I'd wasted these past weeks being scared when I should have been grateful for every moment. Ethan reached for her hand. I was scared too. Scared that I wasn't enough. That I'd disappoint you. That you'd wake up one day and realize you'd tied yourself to some guy whose biggest accomplishment was working at a community hospital. Your biggest accomplishment, Alexandra said fiercely, was being kind enough to give a stranger the gift of life. Was raising an incredible daughter on your own. Was risking your own safety tonight to save someone else. Do you really not see how extraordinary that is? Alexandra left the hospital with a plan. By morning, she'd resigned as CEO of Whitmore Therapeutics, recommending her CFO take over. The board was stunned. The press was in a frenzy. But Alexandra felt freer than she had in years. She poured her resources into the Living Donor Support Fund, transforming it from a small charity into a major organization. Ethan joined her as co-director, bringing his frontline experience and genuine passion for the cause. Together, they built something that actually mattered, helping people who made the choice to save strangers' lives, ensuring they weren't bankrupted by their generosity. Emma thrived. Her vision restored, she threw herself into school, into art, into life. And she had something she'd secretly wished for since her mother died. A chance at a complete family again. 6 months after the accident, on a crisp Saturday morning, the three of them walked through the city park. Emma skipped ahead, pointing out birds and dogs and interesting clouds, while Ethan and Alexandra followed hand in hand. Do you ever regret it? Ethan asked. Giving up your company? Alexandra smiled. Every morning I wake up, and for a moment, I panic. No board meetings, no deals to negotiate. And then I remember that today I get to help someone like you, someone who did something incredible and deserves support. Today I get to have breakfast with Emma and hear about her latest book report. Today I get to be with someone who showed me what it means to truly live, not just survive. So, no regrets? The only regret I have is that we wasted time being scared instead of being honest about what we felt. Emma ran back to them, breathless. Dad! Miss Whitmore! There's a man over there with a dog that looks exactly like a mop. They laughed and followed her. These three people who had found each other through circumstances that seemed impossible but now felt inevitable. A man who gave part of himself to save a stranger. A woman who received a second chance at life and chose to use it differently. A child who believed in heroes and helped the adults around her remember how to hope. That evening, they held a small ceremony at the fund's office. They were announcing a new initiative, covering all medical expenses and lost wages for living organ donors, ensuring that no one who chose to save a life would face financial ruin for their choice. As Alexandra addressed the gathered crowd of donors, recipients, and supporters, Ethan stood off to the side with Emma, watching the woman he'd saved and had, in turn, saved him. When you give someone a second life, Alexandra said, you don't just give them more time. You give them a chance to become who they were meant to be. My donor gave me that gift, though he didn't know me. He gave away part of himself, asking nothing in return. And in doing so, he taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought, can't be negotiated, can't be controlled. They can only be given freely. She looked directly at Ethan. He taught me that sometimes the greatest strength is in vulnerability. The greatest power is in giving, and the greatest fortune isn't what you accumulate, but who you choose to share your life with. The crowd applauded, but Alexandra's eyes never left Ethan's. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep on Alexandra's office couch, covered with a blanket and clutching a book about dinosaurs, Ethan and Alexandra stood on the small balcony, looking out at the city lights. This is real, isn't it? Alexandra asked quietly. This isn't some temporary beautiful dream that's going to evaporate. Ethan pulled her close. I gave you my kidney without knowing you, because it was the right thing to do. But I'd give you my heart, knowing exactly who you are, because I can't imagine my life without you in it. That was surprisingly poetic for a medical technician. former medical technician. I'm a nonprofit co-director now. We're very eloquent. She laughed, and the sound echoed in the quiet night. Inside, Emma stirred in her sleep, dreaming of a future where her father was happy, where she had someone who taught her about business and bravery in equal measure, where their small family had expanded in the most unexpected way. Across the city, in hospitals and homes, other lives were being saved, other chances being given. The work they'd started would continue, would grow, would help countless others experience the miracle of a second life. But for now, in this moment, three people who had found each other against all odds stood together, not as donor and recipient, not as wealthy and struggling, but as something simpler and more profound. As family, when I was dying, Alexandra said softly, I thought about all the things I'd never done. Never fell in love. Never made grilled cheese. Never sat on a couch with a sleeping child and felt like I belonged somewhere. And now I have a second life, and I'm not going to waste a single moment of it. The city sparkled below them, full of strangers who would wake tomorrow to ordinary lives, never knowing how fragile, how precious, how extraordinary those ordinary moments truly were. But Ethan knew, Alexandra knew, Emma knew. They had learned it the hard way, through loss and pain and sacrifice. But they had learned it together, and that made all the difference. As they stood there, holding each other in the darkness, a new day was already beginning somewhere beyond the horizon. A second life. A second chance. A future built not on what they'd lost, but on what they'd chosen to give. And that made all the difference.